2 years ago, Kendrick Johnson's body was found in a gymnasium rolled up in a mat at his high school in Valdosta, Georgia. His death was ruled an accident, but the family suspects foul play was at play, and they filed a $100 million lawsuit against the county and the school district. Earlier this week, I sat down with his parents, Kenneth and Jackie Johnson, local community activist Marcus Coleman, and attorney Ben Crump, to talk about the case and also the efforts that they are trying to seek to make sure that coroners in various cases have the proper credentials to make the proper judgments. Here's our conversation.
They didn't do nothing right with the investigation from day one.
When you look at this particular case, when you look at the interviews, I mean, you had to fight to even get the videotapes released of the gymnasium. You would think that school officials and also law enforcement officials would want all the information available to determine exactly what happened.
Especially when you have a child inside of a school. They should want to tell the parents exactly what happened to their child. Because how can we go on with our lives and we can't even tell our other kids exactly what happened to their brother?
We've seen lots of folks in that community and around the country as well rally for this family, rally to get more information. Are you still surprised that folks there continue to assert that everything was fine, that he was simply falling into a mat, which is hard to believe that if there's a shoe at the bottom of a mat, you wouldn't just knock the mat over to get the shoe. You would jump inside of a mat to get a shoe at the bottom.
Right. I mean, it plays on the intelligence of any a person of sane mind and body. Listen, there's a whole movement going on across the nation, the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and I know that's geared mostly towards law enforcement, for the killings of law enforcement, but we feel that Kendrick Johnson needs to be involved in that same conversation as Eric Gardner, Tamir Rice, Mike Brown, for the simple reason that the botched investigation, the reason of his cause of death that is confirmed by the sheriff's department, is a clear indication that black lives do not matter in Valdosta.
Ben Crump, let's talk about that in terms of that investigation. You and the family are pushing a particular law, when a law enacted that specifically deals with these type of investigations.
Absolutely, Roland. We want to try to turn something negative into something positive to give him a fitting legacy, and we call it Kendrick's Law. And what it is the coroner in most states, not just Georgia, but around America, only has to have a GED and win a popular election, and they get to determine the manner and cause of death. So we have started working with the National Association of Medical Examiners, who also want the qualifications to be more sufficient for the person making such an important determination to say that coroners have to have medical backgrounds, and they want to name this and Kendrick's name.
And for folks who don't understand, that coroner's ruling plays a critical role when it comes to these cases, how DAs treat them, how grand jury treats them, but also how civil juries treat them.
Absolutely, because the coroner, they see him as an impartial person who they just think have the right medical credentials to make such an important decision. But many times these people, Roland, have high school diplomas, won the election, and they work real close with the police. And whatever the police say, they kind of rubber stamp it. And it's just wrong, because if they say it's not a homicide, if it's a suicide or something like in this say, where they say he did it himself, it stops. The prosecutor doesn't do anything else. Nobody does anything else and say, well, we're sorry, your son is gone, and we move on to the next thing.
You also filed a wrongful death lawsuit.
We did. And that wrongful death lawsuit was for $100 million, because we believe the school officials, the sheriff officials, and also people who the U.S. Attorney's Office has targeted for the death of Kendrick in their investigation, namely saying that there's some conspiracy and collusion to deceive this family from knowing the truth.
Speaking of that, in terms of the truth, what has been the reaction and relationship in terms of information from the school district? Have they communicated with you? Have they talked to you? Anything along those lines?
No, they haven't said one word to us. They made sure nobody. No.
And the video, Roland, in that school gymnasium surveillance, it captures everything else except the allegation of Kendrick climbing into the wrestling mat. If it shows everything else, why wouldn't it show him getting into the wrestling mat like you said? It shows the young ladies discovering his body.
Now, is that what is most bothersome? Is that when you begin to look at that, when you begin to say, now, how can you have that many cameras in a school, capture this much data, but the one piece of data it does not capture is actually the video of Kendrick in that particular gymnasium supposedly climbing into a wrestling mat?
Yes. When Kendrick going across the floor, he just disappeared. But you can see a lot of other people, when they discover his body, like Ben said, you can see them running around in that area of the mat. So how can Kendrick get halfway across the floor and it cuts off? That's just one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard of.
And the troubling part is we just sat through federal court last week and wanting the hard drives so that we can take these tapes and analyze them for ourselves. We understand that they're still in the hands, the originals are in the hands of U.S. Attorney Michael Moore, but they have been cloned and sent back to the superintendent's office. And it's just a game with this family, I might say, that they're withholding these hard drives. So we really, really are anticipating that ruling so we'll be able to get our hands and see exactly what the U.S. Attorney is seeing.
Mrs. Johnson, final comment.
2 years later, we still fighting and seeking for the truth about what happened to my son. That's all we ever asked for, was the truth about what happened to Kendrick Johnson.
We want to be able to tell our other kids exactly what happened to their brother. We can't continue to go on living our lives with us not being able to tell our other kids what exactly happened to their brother, because they want to know.
Ben Crump, 20 seconds. Anywhere from the U.S. Attorney where their investigation stands?
Only that they are targeting certain individuals, and they say sooner than later they're going to conclude their investigation.
All right, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and we'll certainly give our audience updates on this case as it becomes available. Thanks a bunch.